Remakes are all the rage these days, from films to TV shows, and especially in video games. I mean, we've seen more remakes in the last few years than most otaku have seen women in their entire lives. Some for the better, and others irrefutably for the worse. And honestly, most of these remakes we've gotten really weren't warranted in my opinion, and seems to show a lack of creativity in the gaming industry. But that doesn't mean all remakes are like that. So welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idle, and that's what we're going to discuss today. 10 video games that, in my opinion, absolutely deserve a remake. Whether it be because they fall into the public consciousness by the wayside due to poorly aged controls or just lack of ports to more modern consoles, something is keeping these games out of the player's consciousness, and all it could take is a fresh coat of paint to bring them back. Before we get into that, we do need to dictate the difference between a reboot and a remake. A reboot is when you take a game series, or any series really, and change it, restart the canon from the ground up like they did with the Tomb Raider series with Square Enix, as opposed to a remake more like what they did with Dead Space, almost an identical game, but graphically overhauled, built from the ground up, and just some quality of life changes. This is going to be about remakes. Very big difference. Now that we got that out of the way, on to the list. Kicking off our list at number 10, the Jak and Daxter trilogy. These games were a platforming delight, showcasing the bromance between Jak and Daxter, and developed by Naughty Dog back when they had talent. These games ruled the PlayStation 2 alongside their rivals Ratchet and Clank, but while Ratchet and Clank have gone on to see success on modern consoles, Jak has stayed dormant since the PS2 era, only making sporadic appearances in other games in the PS3 and onward. I mean, a remake would retain the vibrant colors of the world with more modernized yet still distinctively cartoony art style, not much different than what the Crash Insane trilogy or Spyro Reignited trilogy have done. Getting all three Jak games remade from the ground up like this, keeping the controls and story identical, that is exactly what the franchise needs. It could even pave the way for more games to follow. Now, granted, Naughty Dog would have to remember that they are a company that makes good games and not whatever The Last of Us 2 was, but a boy can dream. Our first and one of only 2 licensed games on this list, Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. Now, I know that Knights of the Old Republic is usually the fan go-to when talking about a Star Wars game remake, and I can appreciate that and understand why, but don't sleep on this N64 classic. I mean, picture this, a revamped, graphically updated, expanded world's refined gameplay that immerses us in the iconic moments from one of the greatest stories in the expanded universe. From piloting the Outrider, which is a much cooler ship than the Millennium Falcon, yes, I said that, to epic third-person gunplay from the wisecracking, tough-talking, masculine smuggler Dash Rendar, who is better than Han Solo, yes, I said that too. The Force is strong with the potential for this remake. I mean, you can still play the original game on Steam, and honestly, it's real cheap, so I'd recommend picking it up. But as much as I hate to admit it, this game's controls just don't hold up. I mean, a lot of the difficulty in this game nowadays comes from the precision platforming that's necessary for certain segments that just haven't aged well, and it probably wasn't even all that great even for its time, but that's easily fixable with a remake. You won't even have to turn the game on and think,
I have a bad feeling about this.
This charming gem had us rolling eggs to save the day. At number 8, we roll into Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg. Let me tell ya, nothing in this world is more important than a Billy Hatcher remake. Ending racism? No, never gonna happen. Solving world hunger? Nah, we're in a resource deficit, some people need to starve. Figuring out which faith is the one true religion? Let those people that starve figure it out, they can get back to us later. No, Billy Hatcher is what the world needs. Easily one of the most unique games to ever release on the GameCube, a remake would not only improve the graphics along with its iconic art style, but also hatch all new mechanics. I mean, imagine enhanced egg rolling physics, online multiplayer egg races, and expanded Eggverse to explore. Plus, this remake probably has the highest chance of anything else on this list, not only with Sega recently announcing their plan to start remaking classics like Crazy Taxi and Jet Set Radio, but because Shun Nakamura, a designer and producer for Sonic Team, stated on Twitter just last year, someday I would like to make his new adventure if possible. What better way to do that than with a remake? Now you've got an entire generation that missed this game that you can build as an entire new fan base, only to go on and give them the sequel 20 years in the making. Godzilla's been on a pretty good run lately. Not only was Godzilla Minus One easily one of the best movies of the year, but we also have the upcoming Godzilla Cross Kong film and currently airing Monarch TV show set in the world of Godzilla. And while that show may suck, this next entry doesn't have to. Number 7 brings us the colossal chaos with Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee. This game released for the GameCube and Xbox back in 2003 and was a smashing good time, pun absolutely intended. Godzilla's luck with video games has been mixed at best, but honestly, the idea behind this game is pure fun. The story mode is a goofy and corny, just like 60s and 70s era Godzilla, with aliens taking over the minds of all monsters, and only Godzilla can stop the monster onslaught. The combat was pretty limited back in the day: punches, kicks, tail attacks, breath weapons, and that was about it. But it made up for it in style. Various real-life cities that you could destroy during your fights, even picking up iconic buildings like Big Ben and hurling them at your enemies, calling in Mothra to assist you, the flashy finishing moves. Now, Remake would stomp onto the modern gaming scene with stunning visuals and expanded roster of monsters, including more modern versions of several of the kaiju we've come to know and love, destructible environments, more refined and fleshed out combos, online battles that'll leave cities in ruins. With Godzilla being the biggest he's been in years, there is no better time to remake this game. At number 6, Darkwatch emerges from the crypts. Never heard of this game? Yeah, I don't blame you. Despite good reviews, it kind of flew under the radar and hasn't been talked about much in the last 2 decades, but it was one that I loved growing up. A first-person shooter published by Capcom, the game is about a gunslinger named Jericho Cross who's turned into a vampire in the Old West and then is recruited by a ragtag militia of paranormal hunters to destroy ghouls and ghosts, all with the incredibly interesting mechanic of choosing whether or not to indulge in your bloodlust, with different powers and movesets available to you depending on if you embrace your dark urges to feed, or follow the light and remain hemoglobin abstinent. I mean, picture this remake as a blend of the Wild West and vampires, drenched in blood-red visuals, refined shooting mechanics, and a hauntingly immersive story, just diving into the undead-infested frontier with revamped, yes, pun intended there as well, horror elements and thrilling gameplay. If nothing else, it is better than rewatching Jonah Hex.
Future's bright.
Now, have you ever found yourself wondering what would happen if Final Fantasy and Resident Evil had an affair that begetted us a bastard child destined for greatness? Yeah, no, probably not. That's a very specific thought. But it is a reality nonetheless. Parasite Eve mesmerized us with its mix of RPG and horror, and not to mention the often forgotten heroine Aya Bria in the starring role. I mean, look, I love Lara Croft and Samus Aran as much as the next guy, but give Aya her due. The original 2 Parasite Eve games came out in 98 and 99 respectively, with a third in 2011 that honestly is not mentioned near as much despite generally positive reviews. However, a remake would elevate the chilling atmosphere with the photorealistic graphics, revamped combat mechanics, because yeah, those probably would not fly in today's day and age, and a retained storyline that could even be added to in just the same way that the remake of the original Resident Evil did with its story all the way back in 2002, thus allowing Parasite Eve players to delve even further into the mitochondrial mutation. And from one criminally underrated horror classic to another, Capcom has been raking in the dough with their Resident Evil remakes these last few years, and many of you know, yeah, I'm not a fan. From actively hating the Resident Evil 3 remake to being very disappointed in the Resident Evil 4 remake to generally enjoying the Resident Evil 2 remake while maintaining it's not as good as the original. I know I'm in the minority on this, but the one game I've been clamoring to see remade, Capcom completely skipped. Number 4 descends into the darkness of survival horror with Resident Evil Code Veronica. Imagine exploring Rockford Island with spine-tingling realism like we get in Resident Evil 4, but with all the original puzzles and enhanced enemy AI that will make you double-check behind every corner. I get it, fixed camera angles are a thing of the past. I'm sure Capcom would need to make some changes. But that's actually not what worries me about this remake. It's how they'll handle the character of Alfred Ashford, given today's mental weakness when it comes to anything that could be controversial and labeled transphobic. I mean, despite story reasons for his character to be the way he is. All in all, this remake is much needed for Resident Evil fans, especially considering there's a gap between Resident Evil 3 and Resident Evil 4 that this game fills, but arguably comes with the most baggage in terms of not just its story, but also its difficulty. This is easily the hardest game in the series. Nonetheless, it's the Resident Evil game that needs a remake more than any other, and if we get it, brace yourself for an adrenaline-pumping, nightmarish time. Now, this one was tough. I debated not even putting it on the list because the reputation of the game speaks for itself. But what the hell, no one can deny this game's greatness. Bronze medalist number 3, Earthbound. This quirky RPG masterpiece deserves a remake that retains its charm while introducing modern visuals and maybe some small updated gameplay mechanics. Nintendo has been known to occasionally throw fans a bone with full ground-up remakes, just like they did with The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening on Switch. Well, the exact same treatment should be given to Earthbound, not because the game doesn't hold up, or because there's anything that honestly needs improved. Just simply because of the game's intimidating reputation. So many people are afraid to even give this game a shot nowadays because it's heralded as one of the greatest but also most unique video games of all time. Add to that the reputation that older games have in general for their difficulty and lack of modern visuals. There are generations missing out on Earthbound. Nintendo truly does need to give us the Link's Awakening treatment for this game, allowing new fans to dive into the absurdity of Onett and beyond with just a nostalgic fresh coat of paint, and who knows, maybe it will actually get people to start playing as Ness in Smash Bros. If you grew up in the 90s, then you know the main man himself, Duke Nukem. A remake of the original Duke Nukem trilogy would inject new life into this pixelated stereotype of the 80s action hero. Given the abysmal Duke Nukem Forever game back on the Xbox 360, we have not gotten a new installment since 2011. That is 12 years. That is criminal. Picture Duke spewing one-liners in stunning graphical fidelity, an overhauled arsenal of alien blasting weapons, and a storyline that strictly adheres to the classics and remains just as irreverent. We're in a serious masculinity drought these days, and an uncensored, anti-politically correct collection of video games is just what the doctor ordered to combat the pussification of modern gaming, and who better to deliver us than the
Mushroom cloud laying motherfucker.
And finally, our top pick, number 1, the Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 Remake Dual Pack. This would blast us into Sonic's world with arguably the greatest 3D level design in Sonic's history, breakneck speed, and of course, a Chow Garden that evolves into a living, breathing playground. The range of motion and freedom to exploit the physics engine in the Sonic Adventure games has since never been replicated. That level of mobility never been repeated. The story, it's equal parts world-ending disaster and Saturday morning cartoon cheese. Modern graphics would make Sonic's adventures as eye-popping as they are fast, and remastered, re-recorded audio with the option to keep the original, frankly, relatively poor voice acting for the ultimate experience in player choice. Sonic has been having the greatest renaissance lately between the films, the 2D games, the success of Sonic Frontiers, and Frontiers was so close to being a great game, but it does fall short in some areas, making it just a good game. I think a remake of these two generation-defining Sega classics could be the final step in bringing Sonic back to his Dreamcast glory days. And there you have it, folks, a detailed rundown of all the games I think need a remake. Yes, I know we all want the gaming industry to reach new heights in terms of originality, creativity, and innovation, but sometimes you just want to veg out with a nostalgic classic, or maybe you want to show one of your best friends something they never got the chance to experience, and re-experience it yourself vicariously through them. These are the games that I think give you the best opportunity for that. But those are just my opinions. Let me know yours in the comments down below. Let me know which of these games you would play first if given the chance, or games you want to see remade that we haven't gotten yet. And all in all, please do hit that subscribe button. I am a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news every day, unless I'm doing one-off videos like this where I just want to have a discussion and get something off my chest. So hit that button. We got over 2,000 subscribers in the last year. We're shooting for 5K this year, and you can help get us on that track. Also, you can check me out at Instagram on wordsofparadise_Leon. And remember, it's all here in the Nerdosphere, and this has been Words of Paradise.